Arcade Heroes.
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and we've got some new game news of a sort to talk about. But before I get into the one that's on the screen right here, I'm going to make you wait, and we'll get into Ninja Turtles here in a second. But first, there is a game from Trio Tech that I received a press release this morning that it is now available. I did film this at IAPA 2023, a giant trade show where it made its debut. It's called Super Blaster. And so what it is, it's a 4-player light gun game that includes up to 5 games on it. It should have more than that at some point. It's essentially an open air version of this game that's sitting right here, the Cube, which was just enclosed and originally shipped with just 3 titles, but yeah, just a cabinet difference. But what it comes with, if we pop over to the page really quick, is the 5 films. It has a 100-inch 4K screen. All the games are built in Unreal Engine 5. It has surround sound, a very nice sound system from what I experienced. Wi-Fi for updates. And let's see, coin-op card reader. So it uses D-Box motion seats, and so they have a very close working relationship with D-Box. In fact, I know some of their employees have worked at D-Box as well. But here are the 5 games, just the generic Zombies, Carnival, which is a little bit like Carnival, and Gigamon, Los Bandidos, and Werewolves. And again, I believe they'll have more content out for this at some point. But one of the things that they've pointed out in the description to this game is that aside from being a cutting-edge 4-seat simulator that redefines interactive entertainment, is that it has a reported payback of the investment in less than 4 months. Now you might be wondering, so how much do one of these things cost? Well, if you recall, the price on the Cube was about $100,000. And now that will vary a little bit depending on which distributor you purchase it from. And I've checked, and I've had one distributor get back to me, and apparently the Super Blaster is pretty much the same thing, about $100,000. But there might be some distributors which sell it for slightly less. I would be shocked to see it go below, say, like $95,000. So it wouldn't be a giant difference. If you're already spending that kind of money, then it's, what's a few more $1,000s? And then, of course, that doesn't include shipping and taxes and all that. I can't imagine what the tax charge would be on that thing. But you might be wondering, why on earth are these games so expensive? Well, it comes down to this. You see, this XD Dark Ride, as it's called. These are essentially miniature interactive theaters, and they have light guns, they have wind effects, they have the motion seats, they have multiple games and such, as you can see on the screen there. But what both the Cube and the Super Blaster are doing is arcadeifying this concept. So bringing it down into something compact that can be moved around, that doesn't require an attendant, and just turning it into an arcade experience, because this XD Dark Ride does require people or locations to have an attendant there, and they start at $250,000, and every seat that you add onto it, it goes up from there. And of course, if you're having a giant, like 128 seat theater that's enhanced as an XD Dark Ride, then it's going to be a few $1 million at least, I would believe. Been a long time since I've heard prices on things like this, but that's why these 2 particular games like that, they're trying to provide a similar experience. It doesn't have the 3D glasses and 3D projection screen or anything, but everything else you get out of it. And so you can now choose between an enclosure or an open air concept. But again, the pricing is about the same, but that is available now, the Super Blaster. So if you are an arcade operator and you do have the funds and the space to put this into your facility, then you can order one now. But now let's get back to the big news that I'm sure you're here for, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade machine that was released by Raw Thrills back in 2018. If we go to the archives, now anything in the Raw Thrills archive means that it's no longer in production. And Ninja Turtles, this went out of production either 2021 or 2022. I can't remember exactly. The release on this one, 2018. It's been about 7 years now. It's been out of production for a couple of years already. I do have one. There's a video on my channel. I'll put a link here for the unboxing of this, and I also captured direct footage of it and shared that before. I've already been seeing a lot of people celebrating the news that this is coming to consoles. So let's watch the trailer together without sound because, again, the algorithm will ding you there. But this was posted by IGN this morning, and has new levels, or at least from what that one shot showed a second ago. Yeah, all new levels and bosses. There you go. Confirmed. Kind of funny that it says that, but then it doesn't show any new levels or bosses. Oh, okay, there we go. There's one. Kick shell with 4 players. All new VO. I wonder if that means new voiceovers for this, or if they're just referring to the new voiceovers that had been created for the arcade game originally. That's a new level. That's a new boss. Another new boss. And of course, the final boss, Shredder. Wrath of the Mutants coming on 4/23/24. Too bad it wasn't 4/24/24, right? But looks like this was ported, designed by Game Mill Entertainment. I think they're involved with other Raw Thrills creations to consoles in the past. I mean, the name sounds familiar, but I don't really know much about them. I don't remember seeing that name on the Cruise and Blast port. But as you can see, coming to the Xbox, PS5, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. It'd be tempting to get a physical copy of this. Maybe I could do a thing again where I get one signed by one of the original producers, creators of the arcade machine. If anybody's interested in that, let me know. But what do you think about this one from the video? Are you super duper excited? Have you been one of those who have been asking for this since the arcade version came out? Now, I guess that can lead us to the question, how long should arcade manufacturers wait before they port it? Now, again, there are a lot of games out there, particularly when it comes to joystick-controlled games, just because the translation from arcade to console is not that wide of a gulf as, say, racing games, light gun games, dance machines, those sorts of things that have unique controllers and maybe some other aspects to the cabinet of them which don't translate very well over to the console. But pretty much all joystick games do translate well. And I remember when this first was announced that there was immediately calls for ports. Now, the reason why I hate that, I mean, I am a gamer. I have a pretty decent game collection across multiple systems, and I love video games. I love the Ninja Turtles. I grew up enjoying them and everything. But as an operator, I've come to loathe that sort of begging for a port, like as soon as the game comes out. Now, I get it that people are trained, or consumers are trained these days, to expect same-day releases, digital and physical, or say like with movies, as one example being there are some movie studios which have released a film on streaming, like HBO Max or something, same day that it comes to theater. But I think that practice has already been shown to not be effective. I mean, maybe it's fine for the movie studios, but it's really not good for movie theaters. Now, I've seen some people celebrating the death of the movie theater. I'm not one of them. And that's because, well, my livelihood is tied to that. Where my arcade is in a mall, I have just down the hall from me an IMAX multi-screen movie theater. And ever since they opened their doors, I've always noticed that my best weekends are tied to big movie releases. And so the effect that those championing the death of the movie theater seem to forget or maybe they're ignorant about it or maybe they just don't care, is that there is a positive economic effect to having something like a movie theater, which brings people out of their homes to a certain location. Now, me personally, I don't do much shopping around movie theaters, but there are a lot of people that do. And my business has been one that has benefited from that. Like the first day that I ever made more than $1,000 in a day was when the Lego movie came out, and I'd never seen anything quite like it. But that was because that was the first major release that the movie theater down the hall had. And so I immediately started noticing a pattern, and I could tell which movies were duds and which movies were doing really well just by how busy I was. I didn't even need to really look at the returns to know, what was out there that was doing well. Now, obviously, things have changed a bit since the pandemic, and it's been very difficult to kind of get a feel for it, but I can still see where you have certain movies that are how they're performing and all that. And so what's the point of all that? Is like when it comes to arcade ports, when you're demanding one to be ported immediately, you're basically telling an arcade operator who's trying to run a business, trying to pay employees, trying to feed his family, go piss off. I don't care about what you have to deal with, whatever. And it's also kind of saying, what's the point of even releasing an arcade machine? It's like, do you even realize how much work and how many millions of dollars go into producing an arcade machine? It's a lot more than I think people realize. And by demanding a port, it does kill the business. Like, this is something that has been an issue for a very, very long time. Now, as I recently mentioned on the blog, I am currently working on an arcade history book. And I'm covering history from the 1970s up until today, sectioning out every decade, and manufacture as their own chapters within those decade sections. But since I'm sourcing this history book, I've been doing a lot of research in Playmeter magazine. And in magazines like this, you get where operators are talking about the issues that they face. And in one Playmeter, and this would be from September 15th, 1984. Now, 1984 was one of the worst years in video games in recorded history. It was at the bottom of the game market crash, where people just stopped buying and stopped playing video games like they had been just a few years prior, where it had basically peaked, at least at the time. And there was lots of discussion between operators and manufacturers and distributors and everybody within the video games business, coin-op as well as home. It's like, what caused this? And now, oftentimes when you look out there, it's like, oh, it was E.T. E.T. came out on the Atari 2600. It sucked. It was the worst game ever made, and that caused people to hate video games, and that's completely inaccurate. E.T. was the straw that broke the camel's back, but there was lots being loaded on the camel's back before that, and that's something that I spend an entire chapter getting into in this book. But one of those things that were piled onto the camel, so to speak, were home ports, and home ports that were released too quickly. And like what you can see here, if you haven't read it already, says, when Playmeter polled operators last summer for its annual State of the Industry survey, many commented that they felt manufacturers were introducing too many new games too quickly, and complained that operators weren't given enough time to get a return on investment on games before they were distributed to the home market. Now, there are some other letters that I've read where some operators pointed out that, well, I don't think it's that big an issue because the port on the Atari 2600 is nothing like the arcade, where the arcade has better graphics, better sound, better controls, better everything. But still, as when you were in the bottom, in 1984, it was really, really bad. I mean, thousands and thousands of locations and operators had to close their businesses, and lots of people lost money. Lots of manufacturers lost millions and millions of dollars. Warner ended up selling a big chunk of the Atari company to Jack Tramiel because of all the losses they had consistently sustained from December 1982 up until summer 1984. And So everybody was looking for something to blame, and operators would see that if there was a manufacturer releasing a game, even if it wasn't arcade perfect or better, or even if it was worse, they still saw a drop in their earnings. Now, I think that has become, well, in modern times where arcade ports are much more infrequent, but when they still happen, that effect still can take place. I've told this story before about Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, where I had it for a month and a half, where it could not be found on consoles, and it earned like nothing else that I've ever seen, and I still haven't seen since then, and this was like 2011. But the day that it came out, 99% of the 40 to 50 players that would be here on a morning like this, which as you can probably tell is dead right now, it's a Tuesday morning, they didn't come back. There have been a couple that came back and played, but vast majority of them is like, well, I have it at home. Why should I bother? And so that's also where I kind of think about movie theater releases and digital home streaming releases and all that too. But of course, these days when you have an arcade port like this one, it's not only arcade perfect, it's probably arcade even better, because they add more content, more bosses, more levels and stuff to bring people back to it. And then, of course, the arcade machine itself doesn't do anything different. It doesn't have like wind effects, or it doesn't have any unique controls. I mean, yeah, the joysticks light up with LEDs, but who cares? It's just the parity between them is so small that yeah, it's like, why would I want to go to an arcade for that specific game? Now, to be fair, this particular game, it never was like a super earner. Even when I got it brand new, which on the year it was released, it wasn't like blowing things off the charts. And last year it made about $1,700. And that's an effect with joystick games. But still, it's something worth considering. But what do you think? How long should it be before arcades get ports? 7 years seems good to me. Definitely not right away. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next video.